Hello world, I'm Evan Gudmstead, an instructor of application and web development at Rankin Technical College. By the end of this video, my objective for you is for you to be able to explain the difference between the nullish coalescing operator and the logical OR operators in JavaScript when used to provide default values for variables. So you should be able to do that by the end of this video. So let's get into it with these code demonstrations. Now, this discussion begins with an understanding in JavaScript about truthy and falsy values. JavaScript is a unique language in that you can take a value, like in this case, the value of 0, and put that inside of an if statement to be evaluated if something is truth or false, true or false. And so in JavaScript, you have two buckets, and these buckets are labeled as the truthy bucket versus the falsy bucket. Now, many other languages don't have this. Normally in those parentheses, you have what's called a Boolean expression. Something like if X is less than 100, or if the username equals admin. And so that expression has to be evaluated to true or false. JavaScript is not that way. You could put a value in that conditional to be evaluated to true or false. So JavaScript is unique in that way. And in order to understand truthy, falsy, you have to understand what is considered falsy. What are the values that fall into that falsy bucket? And you can see on the screen here everything from a Boolean false, the number 0, empty string, null, undefined, and not a number. And these are the falsy values. Now, I will say that these two values in particular are an area of common confusion because in different languages, 0 and empty string might be treated as truthy. And so different languages might treat these values as truthy. And look, I'm a teacher, and I can give you a real common example that I use, for a test score. A test score, you might have a 0 through 100, and a 0 is a value that I would think would be considered truthy. And so there's a scenario where those two areas are often areas for confusion, but in JavaScript, they are in fact considered falsy. And that's a foreshadow of what's to come. The truthy values are basically everything else. But if you want a list of what's considered true on line 12, true, any number, positive or negative number, strings with values in them, objects and arrays, including empty objects and empty arrays. So with this, you can use the logical OR operator to assign values to your essentially your default values into variables using truthy and falsy. And so the way the logical OR operator works is it returns the first truthy value or the last value if they are all falsy. So an example of this, we have a variable assignment 0 or 20, and you can probably guess what the outcome might be if I run this in code here. My first example, if you said 20, that is correct. 0 is considered falsy. Therefore, the last value is truthy, so therefore 20 goes into the default value of test score. And so this OR operator for variable assignment has been used in JavaScript for a long time. I would consider this the traditional operator for variable assignment. Here's another example where we have a couple of falsy values and the last value is guessed. You can save that, run it, and in my second example, you can kind of see how you can provide multiple values on the left-hand side or null, and you can kind of see that doesn't change our output there. So the first truthy value will be assigned. Now, the nullish coalescing operator, fun word, coalescing operator, was released in 2020. I think it comes out June of 2020 is the release cycle. It is similar to a logical OR, but it only considers null and undefined as falsy. And so because of those areas of confusion, the 0 and the empty string being different, they release this new operator that doesn't consider all falsy values. It only considers null and undefined. And that is your nullish coalescing. My editor keeps trying to suggest code for me. Line 24 returns the first defined value that's not null or undefined, or the last value if all of them are null and undefined. And so you can kind of see the first example here, line 25, we've got a variable null, nullish coalescing, undefined, nullish coalescing bar, right? So again, you can kind of take a guess of what the output may be. If you guessed bar, that is correct. Null and undefined would be skipped. If I, just for the sake of it, throw in the null there, the last value, if it's not truthy, it'll assign the last value. So even though it is null, the last value there, that's why, or the last value if all are null or undefined. Okay, so that's example 1. Example 2, we've got 0 or bar. And so take your guess what the variable assignment is there. If you guess 0, that is correct because that's the major difference between the two. 0 and empty string are not in consideration with the nullish coalescing. So with that explanation, I hope you understand and can explain the difference between the nullish coalescing that only evaluates null and undefined versus the logical OR, which evaluates all truthy and falsy values when you're assigning default values for your variables. Hope you enjoyed. I don't have a sign off. Talk to you later.